Hello everybody, my name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. We got a lot to talk about as far as updates to the pro-life movement, and we've seen a merger between two factions. We've seen Big Eva and Big Baby. They are combining to form a massive movement, and that is to punch at the people who are the most pro-life, the people who actually want to end abortion, and the people that actually understand that an unborn child is a human being. They want to punch at those people because their message might not be as palatable, but it is morally consistent. So, the event that kickstarted this was the Louisiana abolition bill, which aimed to codify abortion as a homicide, which would have clear implications for the mother who murders their own baby. It would have clear implications for that. So, this bill was opposed by a bunch of organizations: the ERLC, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, so Big Eva, March for Life, National Right to Life. Both of those are Big Baby organizations. And then we also have the Faith and Freedom Coalition. That's just an organization that I've heard of a lot, maybe, but obviously they showed their true colors because they're not that pro-life now, are they? So, I've been talking about this for a while, and that is how feminism has infiltrated the pro-life movement. And it wants to treat women who murder their own babies as victims. Now, I have an issue with that. I just have an issue with that. And there's a coalition of 70 pro-life organizations in the article that I wrote for Friday. I didn't do a video on this, but we're going to do the video now because there's some more updates on this as, just the moments pass. So we have Brent Leatherwood, who's of the ERLC, who signed this letter. The last time I talked about Brent Leatherwood, he was celebrating or obfuscating the Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmation. So it's no surprise that he's also obfuscating and writing, being a part of this letter, which no Christian could sign. This is an unbiblical letter. It's just bad. Let's just read this bolded part. They bolded this, not me. The letter states, women are victims of abortion and require our compassion and support, as well as ready access to counseling and social services in the days, weeks, months, and years following an abortion. As national and state pro-life organizations representing tens of millions of pro-life men, women, and children across the country, let us be clear. We state unequivocally that any measure seeking to criminalize or punish women is not pro-life, and we stand firmly opposed to such efforts. Now, again, there isn't a real reason for this. And, it has some quotes, and I don't even think that this is a relevant one, because it's talking about justice, pursuing justice, love, and compassion with law and liberty with law. Where is the justice for the unborn? Are they pursuing justice for the unborn? And the answer is they're not. So I'm not surprised that we have a lot of organizations. And by the way, a lot of those organizations that we just mentioned opposed things like heartbeat bills. They opposed laws that would actually challenge Roe v. Wade. We got to this point in spite of organizations like National Right to Life, in spite of waste of time like the March for Life, in spite of the ERLC and their useless blogging that says we shouldn't call women who kill their own babies murderers. We shouldn't use words like death scores. I'm talking about Karen Swallow Prior again, but you get my point. So then I wrote this article because Denny Burke, who's a Southern Baptist Theological Seminary professor, but he's at the undergrad college. He's not at the graduate school or seminary, I should say. So he teaches like a Bible class at the undergrad. And, I don't dislike Denny Burke. I think he's kind of in the same vein as Kevin DeYoung, where he's like super Big Eva, but, maybe has a soul. maybe he has a regenerate soul. Like, I kind of think that way about him. And then he opened his mouth on this subject and is just completely making arguments that are unbecoming of a believer. And it perverts God's justice, because you are acquitting the murderer and you're acquitting the guilty. That's what he's doing here. He's acquitting the guilty. It's not a morally complicated issue. It gets a little morally complicated when you can debate agency and who's making the decision. But let's just be real. Brass tacks, majority of the time, since we're not, majority of the abortions aren't rape or incest or whatever. So in that same vein of thinking, since the overwhelming majority of abortions are elective, or really they're all elective, the majority of abortions are mothers willfully killing their own child. Yes, there are instances of family or boyfriends or whatever pressuring it. Yes, there are instances of human trafficking pressuring the situation. But hold on now. If abortion's rampant as it is in our society, then these other extra things where the woman has less agency are also going to follow suit. It's a little more difficult for parents to pay for a criminalized abortion, but they can easily drive down to their local suburban or urban Planned Parenthood. That's a lot more doable. They're not going to find the back alley dealer. So with that said, this is what Denny Burke wrote. He wrote, morally, it's not always clear what level of culpability should be assigned to the mother. That is not to say that she has no moral culpability in the act. She certainly does have moral agency and culpability in seeking out an abortion. Having said that, it's not always straightforward to what degree she is morally implicated in the act. So you're starting to see that the Southern Baptist Convention, which Denny Burke is a part of, Bart Barber is a part of, and Tom Askell, shout out to him for calling this out. Tom Askell can be pretty soft at times when dealing with wolves in sheep's clothing, but, especially, Al Mohler, especially Ed Litton, but on this he was solid, and I appreciate that. That we have no business defending the act of murder or obfuscating it. So, along those lines, you had Bart Barber tweet about how dirty deeds done dirt cheap is now a big Eva platitude. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap is a big Eva platitude in obfuscating the abortion issue, because it tries to say that the woman doesn't actually commit the act, even though she contracts the act, which, by the way, is the same thing as hiring a hitman. And if you hire a hitman and the hitman gets caught, a la Joe Exotic style, he got thrown in jail for that. Now, didn't he? Even though, the murder didn't actually take place, and even though that they totally did not meet the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt in that court case. So, I digress, but you get my point. And again, I'm only quoting his words in this part. The issue is whether has been a true meeting of the minds in which the woman contracting the abortion has the same understanding of the act and same moral proximity to it as the abortionist. Does she know that an abortion involves the killing of a human being? Was she coerced, etc.? Now hold up. Romans 1. Maybe read that again, especially if you're going to teach at a seminary. To be sure, many women know exactly what they are doing when they get an abortion, but many others have embedded the lie, that's their own fault, that they are simply having an inhuman clump of cells removed. Now, we can tell ourselves that lie as much as we want, but how many people actually believe it? If they actually believe that they were just removing a clump of cells, why are they at a Planned Parenthood and not a doctor's office? Not a real doctor's office. Both women have moral agency and culpability, but do they really have equal culpability, regardless of whether there is a true meeting of the minds? What specific public policy would take into account both kinds of situations? What kinds of situations? I think it's pretty obvious. that there is no distinction. And I don't really believe that a woman thinks that when she's pregnant, she just has a clump of cells inside of her. I don't think that's true at all. That goes against human anthropology and human biology. We just know that's not the case. Your body makes all sorts of changes telling you it's not the case. And of course, we all know that's what sex leads to. But Denny Burke is operating on an outdated paradigm. In fact, most of us don't really understand what the nature of abortion is or is becoming. So in the article, there are many instances of abortions where there is no hitman. The woman is the hitman herself. So in the article, I cite the CDC, and this is based off 2019 data. And I'll talk about what the trend is in a second. But 42.3% of all abortions were early medical abortions. These early medical abortions would be up through week 9, I believe. And it would use a drug called mifepristone. Mifepristone, maybe I'm mispronouncing that. But, the pro-life movement doesn't talk about that enough. We like to talk about the other ways of, the vacuum cleaner. We like to talk about the surgical and vacuum cleaner and poisoning and stuff like that. But mifepristone is like 42% of all abortions. And that was in 2019 data. The data is trending heavily towards going that route. And that's a danger that the pro-life movement isn't recognizing enough. We're touting lower abortion rates when in reality, there is some truth to lower abortion rates. I do think the abortion rates are lowering in certain states. But here's the thing. We are undercounting those who are killing their own child with pills because, the surgeries will get counted. So use of early medical abortions increased 10% from 2018 to 2019. That's 10% in 1 year. And 123% from 2010 to 2019. So in these cases, a doctor prescribes mifepristone, and the woman takes it in at her home on her own volition. Now, I believe there are pro-life organizations that hand out an antidote to this drug. So if a woman takes it, has a regret, she can take a different drug to cancel out that drug. I think there is a pro-life thing about doing that. But in these instances of abortion, there is no traditional abortionist. The woman is pulling the proverbial trigger, and the abortionist is only selling the murder weapon. Are we really going to not indict the woman in those instances? Which, by the way, the last 2 years, I think we've seen a probable rapid increase in abortion telehealth. Or tele-hitman, I don't know. I don't know what to call it, but obviously we saw the rise of telehealth in a lot of other areas. You don't think Planned Parenthood got the same thing going on as well? Especially since the people that are the mass cult, the Branch Covidians, are probably also very pro-abortion. That's a very pro-abortion crowd. So you don't think they would opt for a telehealth? And telehealth, you just get this mifepristone, and you're good to go? That's the world we're living in now. We got to worry about that. We got to worry about abortifacients being sold on Amazon. We got to worry about the horse paste that the Vice.com was touting after the Dobbs leak. We got to worry about those things. So the abortionist doctor thing will still exist. It will always exist, but you can see that the abortion industry wants to phase that out because paying a butcher is a lot more expensive than being a drug dealer, than being an arms dealer to kill your own child. It's a lot more cost effective to go the arms dealer route rather than the hitman route. You see what I'm saying? That's the future of the abortion industry, if we allow it to continue. And I don't think enough pro-life people are prepared for that. But there are pro-life organizations that are, obviously. But it's not National Right to Life, it's not ERLC, and it's certainly not the March for Life. So, what do I want to get at in this video? The pro-life movement has a choice that it can make. We can either embrace justice or we can embrace feminism. We cannot have both. We cannot have both. Either we can craft laws that pursue justice for the unborn, or we can craft laws that protect the murderers. Do we believe that an unborn human is alive? And if so, should not killing them entail the same consequence as it would a regular human being? Either we believe that life begins at conception or we don't. And if we believe that life begins at conception, this has moral consequences for ending that life intentionally. We want to have our cake and eat it too. We want to believe that life begins at conception and ignore that ending that life should have earthly consequences. That's unbiblical. That is straight up unbiblical. And then we want to lie about, we want to embrace the Romans 1 lie. That's unbecoming of a Christian. The Christian knows that we can know by Scripture that that people can deceive themselves, but in their inward of hearts, they know. They flat out know what they are doing is killing a human being. It's human anthropology. It's human biology. We know this. No amount of lying to yourself should absolve you from earthly consequences. And it's a shame that we have Big Eva and largely the leaders of the pro-life movement sandbagging our efforts to bring justice to America's greatest. And I am not being hyperbolic. And I am fully aware of America's other injustices. But this was America's greatest injustice. Greatest injustice. Justice or feminism, choose one. That's all I got to say about that. My name's Rez, it's the Evangelical Dark Web. You saw that those were articles that I wrote over at Evangelical Dark Web that I used in this article, or in this video. And if you want to support the Evangelical Dark Web, the least you can do is subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the RSS feed, and while you're at it, if you really love the Evangelical Dark Web, you can support us over at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join Patreon-like system over there, and tiered style reward system as well. Have a blessed day, and I'll catch you on the next one.